Hello and welcome to the Providence College podcast. I'm your host, Liz Kay, and I'm joined by producer Chris Judge of the class of 2005. Here on the Providence College podcast, we bring you interesting stories from the Fryer family. This week, we have the pleasure of speaking with Brenda Chapman McGill, a member of PC's inaugural class of women, one of just 9 Black women to enroll in Providence College in 1971. McGill majored in psychology and spent more than 2 decades at the Community College of Rhode Island, working in advising and with students with disabilities. Not long ago, she returned to the classroom herself, completing her doctorate in behavioral sciences in 2016. Brenda, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. So glad to be here.
So tell us about your path to Providence College. What led you to enroll in 1971?
It was interesting. Excuse me. It was interesting because it was not planned. College was not something I had discussed with family or thought of even, but a high school guidance counselor saw something and handed me a pack of papers and said, have your parents fill this out and bring it back. And I was a studious student, and so I did what I was told and received a letter from Providence College saying you've been accepted into the summer program. And if you had completed the summer program, then you would be awarded a MLK scholarship. And then just to maintain my scholarship was keeping that B average. And that's exactly what we got. So that's what kind of brought me here. It was my first adventure from home. And I was looking forward to just being able to experience what that's like to be out of the house. And so that's what brought me here.
But you were, to be clear, you weren't traveling all that far from home, right?
No. When they built New Dorm, which now has its real name, we were able to see my street from the top floor of New Dorm. So I lived on the east side of Providence, near Rochambeau Avenue. And so it was very close. Sometimes students would say things like, "You live where?" I could walk home practically, but
so when you were living in McVinney that first year, you could basically see your street.
Yes, McVinney, Aquinas, no.
McVinney would be the tall tower that goes 10 floors.
When it was built, right? McVinney, yes. Okay, I was just thinking the very first building, McVinney wasn't there yet. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
And where was your family from originally? What brought them to Rhode Island?
Yeah, so we're from Macon, Georgia, and I still have a few relatives still there. My mother was a family of 11, and my dad was just he and his brother. But my dad was in the Navy, and he was transferred to Newport base, and so we followed him from Georgia up here. And I was probably preschool at that age, that time frame, and we stayed. He completed his, 21 years or whatever they were doing back then at the naval base, and he was on a aircraft carrier. Which was always exciting to go and pick him up and be able to see this humongous building type ship.
Skyscraper on water, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But so that's what got us here.
And had they gone to college themselves, your parents?
Nope, they had not. I don't believe either of them finished high school, and which made me a first-gen student. Both my brother and sister had gone to college. Not positive they finished the bachelor's degree by the time I went in. So neither one of my parents had that.
So they weren't pushing you at home to go? But
no, not at all. It's not a table conversation. Yes.
And what led you to choose to major in psychology?
It was a second choice, right? In high school, we had to do an internship, community service, and I chose to work at the elementary school that I passed going to high school. I went to Hope High School, and Martin Luther King Elementary School was on the way there. And I read with students who had not yet mastered the reading skills. And I said, I think teaching would be nice. I'm enjoying this. And so, but coming here on a full scholarship, I wasn't going to argue about what programs they were here. So psychology was the closest one I could connect with. Again, I took a couple of courses, evening classes, but there was no program for education, a full program here in the early 70s.
You were, at the time, one of a small group of students of color at PC, and of course, one of a few women as well.
Yes.
Who were some of the people who supported you and helped you and your classmates during those years?
Well, we had a great support system, and it started with Father Robert Morris, and his office was always open to us. And he had such a wonderful demeanor about him that I felt safe communicating with him, and surprising to me that he actually would see things through and get back to me and let me know what I needed to do next to answer my concerns. They had at that time, Dr. Robert Hamlin was also here on campus, and Willesi Commission was also here. So that was a wonderful thing to have. Two additional people of color on campus, considering how few there were on campus to see. And so they were essential for my feeling like I belonged here, and, keeping that conversation strong. That you belong here, you can do this work, don't quit. Yeah. So they were my biggest supports. And obviously my roommates and, the brothers on campus who were always treated us like little sisters. It became a very good family.
And when you say brothers, you mean like the older students of color, the yes. men who would have enrolled
the seniors, before? Yes, the senior classmen. I don't recall whether the years that they were in, it was much later that I realized, who's a sophomore, who's a junior, who's a senior, because college was such a new experience for me. I didn't know all the language and all the lingo of understanding that, but yeah, they were great. So
your husband, Patrick Joseph McGill, was also an alum in the class of 1972. How did the two of you meet?
Yeah, that's so interesting here. So I actually met Patrick when the other students of color were playing card games, spades or bid whist, I'm not a card game player either, but I did have to learn how to do that eventually. And he would play with them. And so if we were going by the dorms and they were downstairs in the lounge playing these card games, he would be there. And eventually we started to have conversations. As a group, we might go and watch the guys do a pickup basketball game, and he would be there. And I'm like, what is this non-color person hanging out with all these people of color all the time? And he had been accepted in their group, and so it was a comfortable place to start chatting, and we just continued to chat. He was crazy enough to ask me to marry him in my freshman year, and if you know when we actually got married, I said, "Are you crazy? I've just left my father's home. I'm not quite ready to join another man's home." But he waited another 6 years, and then we got married. Yes.
That's a lovely story, but it sounded like he knew.
Yes, he had made the choice. Yes. So it was good. It was a little difficult, but timing being dating a white man, and even with the looks around campus, or if we went off campus, the stares was uncomfortable. But we were young enough and foolish enough that it was like, whatever. And on campus, I think my brothers and my sisters were concerned because, again, this was not a normal site on campus as to how I was handling all of this. And after they kind of realized, okay, she's got her head on right, he's going to be okay, he's treating her good, they all re-accepted him again as well. So throughout our whole marriage, we all were still together with the rest of the college campus, yeah.
But it sounded like, he needed some vetting.
Yes, I would give that. It's very true, definitely. They did.
Wow. But you dated your 4 years of college, and then?
Yes, we dated those 4 years of college. I went off to Georgia State University for 2 years, and around that time, his mother actually said to him, "If you're serious about this young lady, she's not going to sit and wait for you. You need to put a ring on her finger." So he did. We got engaged at La Salette Shrine, and so that's a little special place now.
Up in Massachusetts.
Yes, it's right over the line. Yeah.
What a beautiful story that and how nice for your mother-in-law to be advocating for you that way.
Really, yeah. So that was great.
So you mentioned you went to Georgia State after after graduating. What were some of the things or experiences that you had at PC that helped you choose a career?
Choosing my career. There was some work. I want to say in my senior year, I worked at Rentham State School, which is an institute at that time was called for severely and profoundly handicapped students. And again, continue to find my standing, my feeding, my footing around what I like to do, what touches my heart. And teaching clearly became obvious during that time frame. And so my going off to Georgia State was to get teaching certification, and I wanted then to continue my psych degree in counseling. Without a lot of advice, I got there and found out they wouldn't allow me to double major. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm here now. If I have a place of residence, I will finish one degree and go home. And so I did my teaching certification in Georgia and came on back. But finding that love of teaching is what happened here.
Outside of classes, what were some of the clubs and organizations that you joined? What did you do for fun?
Stayed out of trouble mainly was my fun, but I was a crazy student. I studied a lot, and I joined the Afro Am Club. And then at some point, maybe my junior year, we participated in a competition to earn a spot on the cheerleading squad. And so those were my two biggest ones that I participated in on campus.
So I wanted to ask you more about cheerleading because I have learned that you are not the biggest basketball fan. So what led you to seek a spot on the cheerleading squad?
Socialization. For me, being able to represent was a big piece for me. That it would have a diverse group of cheerleaders when the ladies that joined me to have that discussion of who's going to try out and why are we trying out. It was very important to us to be represented on the team.
So at that point, it sounds like from your first few years that it was not integrated, that it was...
I think it was all boys when I first got here. There were no women.
So the integration was more than...
than just
race. So that first year when you first arrived, it stayed all men?
Oh, yes. When we joined, that's when they first let women participate.
I would have thought that would be one of the simplest changes, but, up until that point, it had all been men anyway, right?
Yeah, everyone had to take a long time to adjust to women being on campus in general. I meant to grab the old booklet that they created. Have you seen the booklet? Right. So to comment on just how fragile we were and how we needed to be treated and be aware of what our needs were and not to make us upset or cry and things like that. So they were protective. I'll put it that way.
But so joining the cheerleading team when you were not a fan, you must have been subjected to an awful lot of basketball as a result.
Yes, and it was great. I was open to these new experiences. I think that was mainly what it was. And I enjoyed it. Here I go with trying to remember basketball terminology. We made it to some high level of a game of winning, and we were going to travel with them. And so we were told to raise funds by dressing in our uniforms and going downtown to a gathering of financial supporters. And so we did that. And it was the first time I realized that people walked around with $100 bills. And so it was good.
That does sound pretty good.
Yes. And so we were able to travel down and have a place to stay and travel back.
That would have been the Final Four in 1973, perhaps?
Sounds good.
Okay.
You know.
I think that would that have been, I'm just checking in with Chris Judge here, is it the first or the second Final Four? That would have been our first Final Four appearance for Providence College. I think a lot of people would recognize that appearance because it featured Providence College greats Ernie D.
Yes.
DeGorio and Marvin Barnes.
Yes, yeah. We're all still here. Yeah. It's really good.
Brenda, you spent the bulk of your career at the Community College of Rhode Island. You were helping students succeed, which is amazing work, must have been so rewarding. What were some of the highlights for you?
Wow. My goodness. I think with CCRI, my first role there was with the Office of Student Services and creating a consortium to support students who were deaf and hard of hearing. And that required me to do training across the country for my own training, and then bring that knowledge back and create a group of every single college, which we have quite a few in Little Bitty Rhodey, with their directors of disability services, and then explain how federally we needed to support students who are deaf and hard of hearing. That transitioned into a TRIO program. I'm not sure. TRIO is a federal program, student support program as well. There are 3 different levels to it, and ours was a student success program. So I would have a caseload of students, and mine just happened to be students who had disabilities. So a variety of learning disabilities, physical disabilities, emotional disabilities. And that's where, once again, my love for teaching kicked in, because we had to teach our own student success course for that group. Did that for several years, and then went into advising and counseling as a director. That loved that work, because it was not just with students, it also involved working with faculty and deans and the different resources on campus. And then, as you know, the last 5 years I was with Disability Services, so it kind of felt full circle that I started with students with disabilities and then I ended with students with disabilities. And again, speaking to faculty and chairs around the Adult Disability Act and what our responsibilities were with that, helping the college write policies and things like that. So just, I loved it. So I guess the highlight right now is that working with other faculty members to just continue to improve how we teach and how we help students learn.
Right. Yeah. I'd imagine in that span of a career, like the technology and the resources that you were able to provide for students would have really advanced.
Yes, it has, very much so. Constantly being updated with the type of technology that's available, maintaining labs on campus for students to be able to test and do homework, have their books on tape. It was always quite an endeavor, even to technology where, for example, when we needed to have a student take an online class, but they needed an interpreter, the interpreter needed to not only hear the teacher, but the student needed to see the interpreter. And so we needed software that would not just say, I can focus on the speaker, because I need to see the interpreter who's not speaking, but I don't need to see 20 student faces. And we were able to find that technology, and eventually the school realized that they had to use it because it had to meet those students' needs. So yeah, always researching in technology.
Right. These are federal mandates, right? So,
right, exactly. Yeah.
Brenda, it feels like things, speaking of coming full circle, things went full circle for you when you went back to school to get your own doctorate.
Yes.
Years after helping students succeed in their own classes, there you were back in the classroom again. What prompted you to go back?
It was a high school dream. We had a presentation, and it actually was a woman of color, and as they introduced her, and they said she was a Ph.D., and I was sitting in the auditorium going, what is that? And then they called her doctor, and I'm like, but what's the Ph.D. thing? And so without knowing what it was, I decided at that point I wanted one. That was it. That was actually the seed that was planted. And when I finally realized what it was, I said, okay, I'm not going to do that while I'm raising children. And I allowed them to get through college and get independent and leave home, and then I went back. And after I started at URI in the behavioral science program, I kept saying, Lord, what am I doing? Why am I doing this at this age? And Patrick would remind me and say, he brought you to this because you asked for it. And so he's going to get you through this. So just keep going. And after a few years, you can't stop. So I wasn't going to stop. So yeah, it was wonderful.
Can you tell us about your research? What were you examining?
Oh, sure. Yes. So my research focused on the student success course, and was it having any effect with the retention for students? I took the focus for students who were developmental students as well, so the students who came into the community college but weren't performing at grade level for English and math, for writing and math. And the research showed that, yes, it did make a difference. And oh my gosh, I want to say it was over a course of 6 years, the data that I used, because we needed to allow for students that might stop out and come back. We also needed to allow for students who are going part-time to actually be able to finish their 30 credits or 60 credits for the associate's degree. And it would just not surprised me that the students who had more support were doing well. And then compared those numbers of students against students who did not take the course. It was not mandatory, and so I had a large percentage of students who were not taking the success course. And so it was good to have that comparison group in the research. It's a crazy experience just doing that entire process. My data crashed the year before, and I had to redo all of my data again. And my major professor, who's Kat Quina from URI, had said, oh, you can do this. And I'm like, I am not trying to stress myself. I'll take another year and get it all done again. But the Ph.D. was quite an experience. And it was recommended to be, I was invited to include it in the What Works Matters. I always want to say that wrong, which is a initiative from the U.S. Department of Education. They're just collecting data, and they can look at reports of what kind of things have been done that would help, students in college. So I was pretty proud of that.
Definitely.
I was invited to submit it to that. Yeah.
That definitely seems like a kind of a validation that this was important work, and that maybe it's something could be replicated someplace else, or like. Absolutely. And one of the fun things is that the library, once you submit your dissertation, they keep track of how many people requested and use it or whatever, and then they send you a quarterly report. So I'm always excited to say it's still being used. That is so cool. Across the globe, and they'll tell you what institutions have requested and things like that. So I think you're joining a large contingent of doctorates who are anxiously consistently checking their citations and seeing how often. It's fun to see, yes. So, but you retired from CCRI not too long after finishing that doctorate. What are you up to now? Yeah. What keeps you busy? So besides my wonderful grandbabies, which I'm so intent on spending lots of time with, which is why we had to delay today, but I am working on a book and working on an online program. Again, just staying where I am. I want to continue to give back to students, and so to be able to provide that same support. During my 15 plus years of teaching at CCRI, I began using a program that's, no one uses this word anymore, but it's called Trans-Theoretical Model of Behavior Change. And it was created by the Pachaskas at URI. And it was used mainly for medical training. How do we get people to use contraceptives correctly, how to take pills correctly, how to improve their eating, exercise, stop drinking, all those wonderful behavior change issues there. And I began using their model with my students because, again, students would come in and not have a clue as to why they're not doing well and not know where to go. And if they don't get the right support right away, they could back away and quit. And so I began using it in my psych classes. And it
has helped them realize that they have some control over their future by changing their behavior. And so there are multiple steps to it. And so that's the book I'm writing and the program that I'm creating online. And very slowly, but it's happening.
Very neat. So like applying this model for health communication and helping patients adhere to the plans that had been set up for them.
Right. So it's that same model, but this is using just for college students. And so basically looking at returning adults as a focal point, whether they're in a health science program or it really doesn't matter. But the idea is a student who wants to do really well, who needs to keep that B+ average or higher and can't figure out what's going wrong, then I can help them see that and get them through it. So, which I've done for so long. It's so cool.
But so now to get a plan and then together and hopefully share that with even more students, right?
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
You also shared your story with our colleagues in Providence College's archives as part of the Dear Future Friars Oral History Project. Why did you want to get involved in that initiative?
That's the same reason about having that representation there. And that even more than that, it's how important a history is to have and to be able to hear a voice from the past. We know a lot of things haven't changed. Some things have gotten better. And if you read or listen to the news, you know some things have gotten worse. And it is so important that we know what is going on before us. We know that it's not good to forget what has happened before us, or we might repeat that same behavior again. And so I said I've been asked, so I won't say no. I won't step away from this responsibility that's been offered to me to share my past. And in the long run, we know the struggle is real for all of us, female, women of color, first gen, all of the different categories, and that you can make it, that we can get through this. It's not always easy and it's not always fun, but if you have a strong faith, you just have to keep going. And so I'm like, I'll add my voice to this.
And for those listeners who aren't familiar with Dear Future Friars, it's essentially an oral history project that's focusing right now on the stories of alumni of color at Providence College. And so we'll definitely share in the show notes ways that other alumni of color can participate as well if they're interested.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm hoping there will be quite a few that will come forward. Yes.
You know, I've asked you a lot about your experience being a person of color at Providence College, but I don't think I've really asked you much about what it was like to be part of that first female class.
Oh, that was a hoot. Oh my gosh, people kept saying, "Oh, you're looking for a husband." I'm like, no, I am not. And, you know, all of the issues around how to treat the women on campus, it was a given. And I have to say, I ignored most of it. Unless it was absolutely, in my face. If someone made a slight comment, I'd be like, wow, really? And then I'm on to say, what were we doing? Where are we going? A lot of friends took offense, and I just thought they were being silly. Some of the students were silly. Some of my faculty were silly. You know, they would make strange comments like, you know, how are you feeling today? And they were referencing, like, are you in that season right now or that cycle right now? And I'd be like, what are you talking about? But again, I was one of those, I was not engaging the issues. But they were there. They were there. So I'm hoping some of the other women can talk in much more detail as to how they responded to some of that.
Well, it sounds like you were able to let all of that roll off your back and not let it affect you and your goals, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, I had a goal, I had a path, and I was not looking to get disrupted, which is why we didn't get married. Either, yes.
Brenda, can I ask you about your faith? You had referenced it once before, but are you a religious person yourself?
Yes, I am. I'm a Christian, and so I truly believe we all have a purpose here, and that we have the support that we need if we can sit and understand what God has given us here. So he won't bring you into an environment that he won't give you a way out of. And I think that's how I kind of operated with Providence College. And even though at that time, I don't even think I was a baby in Christ at that point. I'm out of my parents' house, I'm on a college campus. But as I continued to grow and become a mom and then to raise my children, it became even more important to me that they understood the authority that they walk with and the power that God gives us to get through and to do what he's asked us to do in the process.
And what was it like for you to come to Providence College as a person who's not Catholic, into this very Catholic environment?
Again, my little, as quiet as I was back then, and most people probably say she was pretty quiet. She's talking an awful lot right now. It was, again, the experience and the exposure. In high school, I had determined to visit churches in my neighborhood. And I had a very diverse group of people that I knew. And so I tried to go to a synagogue that didn't ever quite work out. I used to walk by the synagogue on my way to and from junior high school at Nathan Bishop. And then I was able to go to Catholic services, which I found very strange because they were still in Latin. And I kept thinking, do you know what he's saying? Do they know what he's saying? And I'm the only one who don't know Latin here. And I found out that no, they did not know what he was saying. And so that was interesting. And then up on Moses Brown's campus, they have oh my gosh, I just forgotten the name.
The Quaker?
The Quaker
Meeting house,
right,
yeah.
Service. And so that was silence until they felt the Spirit moved and then someone would speak. But it was never a congregational response. And I was like, this is really interesting. So coming here was not, I didn't look at it as just another way someone was living and that I was going to, work through this. It was interesting seeing the guys in their white robes all the time. It was interesting to me. But again, as long as we didn't have any conflict, I was fine.
Brenda, Dr. McGill, it was wonderful chatting with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
You are so welcome. Thank you for having me today.
Subscribe to the Providence College podcast in all the usual places, including iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify, as well as your smart speaker. If you like what you hear, please review and share with others. Thanks for listening, and go Friars.